Hey everybody, spoilers for HBO's The Last of Us and The Last of Us video game. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of The Script Department. I'm John. I'm here with Caleb to discuss episodes 1 to 3 of HBO's The Last of Us. Before we get into all things Bill and Frank, because let's be honest, that's all anybody's talking about, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, subscribe to the channel, hit us up on YouTube, social media, buy us a coffee to support the channel. All the links are in the description. So check that out. Okay, let's just dive right into this. I'm a huge fan of The Last of Us games. I mean, I think The Last of Us is impeccable as a video game. Incredible gameplay, incredible world design, incredible characters. And just brilliant production all the way. I mean, the scoring is incredible as well. I love The Last of Us Part 2 as well. I just think that's a masterpiece. I know some people weren't hot on that one. I think that is just as good. We've done a video about all that before, about me gushing over The Last of Us with Laura and so on. You can check that out in their channel way down, embedded at the bottom somewhere, and I'll put the link in the description for this as well. Where are you coming to from this? I'm going to open up IMDb and get some characters' names and stuff like that, because or actors' names.
I mean, I'm in the same boat. I love the game. I think me and you have been we've been waiting for this to do this episode for a long time, because I know we've talked about it in the past, and our love for the game, our love for the second game. I think that this is a great conversation piece because we're talking about what, in a way, changed the video game landscape of how games were written, the quality, like the elevated nature of a story, and the way that it's done, kind of in a cinematic way. Because not to say that hasn't been good games before this, but there is a lot of within the games. There's a lot of themes about player agency, and a lot of what you get and take away from the game is by doing it. The cold nature of Joel is by you being a murderer in the game, and so I think you lose some of that here. But I am interested, and already think that they're doing an interesting way of adapting that to a non-participation
more
medium,
a more passive medium.
Yeah. So that's kind of where I'm at.
I think you just jumped all over my points. You've stolen all of my key points. I was gonna
well, let's dive into them.
I was gonna say this as well. I think, like, I agree with you completely. I think just on The Last of Us as a game, and I'm not going to get into anything about the game outside of Bill's Town, where that's where episode 3 kind of ended. So, like, we'll talk about the game as the show moves into those sections. We won't spoil any endings or anything like that here. But I've always said that The Last of Us as a game is a game changer, no pun intended, right? The games industry, and I used to teach game design and everything at Bangor University, and and this was always kind of one of my talking points. The games industry has always had a very lazy approach to storytelling. People will nail me to the wall for saying that. I don't care how much you love Final Fantasy VII, right? The writing is not as impeccable as the high standards of literature for centuries, or the high standards of theater for centuries, or the high standards of cinema for a century, right? The writing in games has always been subpar to those other storytelling medium. And people will always come to the defense of the games industry by saying, yeah, but it's a different medium. Yeah, well, go look at the marketing for those games and tell me that it's trying to be a different medium, because they're only selling you a movie. Like, when you watch the Uncharted trailers, when you watch the Last of Us trailers, the original games, when you watch the Tomb Raider trailers, or Metal Gear Solid, or Resident Evil, or any of them, they're selling you a movie experience. They're not selling you great gameplay. They're not selling you player agency, right? And then when you play it, you get great gameplay, but you get a pretty lackluster story in a lot of these cases, right? Now, again, I've named out some of the best stories in games, not those cases, but there are games out there that have always faltered. And even as much as I love Kojima, for example, Metal Gear Solid, we all know the storytelling in that is pretty clumsy from time to time, right? And the cheesy as all hell and all that. Like, but we forgive it because the gameplay is incredible. And the overall collective experience is incredible. I always say it's like yin and yang. You know, you can have great cutscenes, you can have great kind of great moments of dialogue, great action sequences, and so on and so forth. But it's completed by great gameplay, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I think The Last of Us is so amazing, because it's half and half coming together perfectly to create this amazing experience. The thing, however, is that The Last of Us, in terms of its standard of storytelling, is pretty average HBO fare. And I'm not talking about the TV show here. I'm talking about like what Neil Druckmann did. And this is absolutely nothing against Neil Druckmann or any of the people involved in The Last of Us. It is impeccable. But that game came out the year Breaking Bad ended, if I'm not mistaken. And it came out the year that season 1 of True Detective came out as well. And that's pretty impeccable storytelling too, right? This stuff is a dime a dozen on HBO normally. And it's appropriate that HBO picked up The Last of Us as a TV show because that's where that standard is so common. And I think it's amazing that, to your point, that The Last of Us raised the standard and made the games industry like get wise to the standard that it needs to be at if it wants to compete against television and film and all that as a storytelling medium. It has now, from a cinematic perspective, because of Neil Druckmann and because of Naughty Dog and because of those guys. So hats off to them. I know it sounds like I'm kind of ragging on them, but it's not. Like you guys, they changed the game, right, for the whole industry. And now we've God of War Ragnarok, which for me is one of the greatest character studies and the greatest stories I have ever experienced across any medium. And I think we wouldn't have that if it wasn't for The Last of Us. So if you're ever curious as to why The Last of Us is an important game, that's why. But The Last of Us translating into TV, it kind of feels like a little bit more work is needed if it wants to hit the impeccable standards of television. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
Like, that's how I'm feeling about it right now. Like, I'm loving the show. I'm totally in on it. But I'm also totally in on it because I'm married to that video game. And it's only with episode 3, which we'll get into, where I started to really think, like, are they doing enough here to make this rise to the levels of True Detective season 1, of Breaking Bad, of The Sopranos, of the greats of television? I know Last of Us is breaking some HBO records right now. Is it season 1 of House of the Dragon levels of writing? I know it's a different show, but is it hitting those standards? Is it hitting the standards of Russ Cole and Marty Hart solving a case in Louisiana or wherever it was? Like, again, I know they're all different beasts and different animals, but like they're all up there. Like there's a measurable standard. Is it hitting that standard for you, do you think? Because sorry, and just to complete my sorry, as a game, it hits those standards for sure.
Yes.
As a TV show, is it hitting those standards for you?
So as a game, it hits the same standard for me, and I think that's what's beautiful about being game lovers. We like, this is our our standard, our gold standard. And so with this, for the TV show, I would say it's not hitting that level, and I think that's due to the medium that it's playing within, because of how the game is designed so well to fit within and hold like hand in hand with the storytelling, that the adaptation is gonna struggle with, I think. And I have thought that it's always going to struggle with this, and I think The Last of Us Part 2 is going to struggle way more than The Last of Us Part 1, and I hope that they can adapt it in a way to still, because Last of Us Part 2 has such a beautiful message to me,
Mm.
and a complex message, that if they can find a way to adapt that message and still get the same feeling coming out of it, especially with everything that comes along with the divisiveness, and I think having uh, you know having an adaptation is going to be hard always. And I think specifically to look at the first episode for me, with what's his daughter's name?
Sarah.
Sarah, yes.
Mm.
uh with Sarah and Joel's relationship, I was talking about it with one of my friends about how it doesn't hit the same as the game. Like there's it's still dramatic, it's still emotional, but there's a level of intimacy played between the two of them, and like this endearing, uh and that comes down to me for the voice actors in the game did so well. And not to say that Pedro Pascal and Nico Parker, it looks like,
Mm.
didn't play it well either, but there's it's part of that. You are stepping into the shoes
Yeah.
of Joel. You're not watching from the outside looking in.
I think the actors are
um
doing amazing work. Like
yes.
I mean, Bella Ramsey. If you close your eyes and just listen to her talk, it sounds like it's Ashley Johnson. And she's not doing an impression of Ellie. Like she has just embodied that character so well that I sometimes can't tell the difference. Yeah. Sorry.
I
Go on.
For me, uh Pedro Pascal is doing the same thing for me. I started watching the show and I was like, this is Joel. Like it's a different take, like a slightly different take on Joel. And I kind of love this take, because it's like it's not just a white Texan guy. Now it's kind of furthered. And I mean, he still has the look, he still kind of has the voice. And so like that's for me, that's what I love getting out of an adaptation. So yeah, he's been killing it for me.
We'll get into each episode in a bit, in a moment. And one thing I would like to do is when we're finished with the whole show overall, it'd be nice to do a kind of a full spoiler discussion of how maybe they can adapt Last of Us Part 2, because you are totally right. They have their work cut out for them. I've always said that the thing that is so special about Last of Us Part 2 is you cannot, like that story right now in its current incarnation, I don't think it can exist. I don't think it can be told without a player helping to complete it. You know, this is a game with no, like, you don't have any choices in terms of how the narrative plays out or anything like that. And yet, I still feel without the player involved in that, you don't get that story. Doesn't have the same weight to it. Um, and the choices of the storyteller, like that's just how brilliant Neil Druckmann is as a story, and the overall team. I know there's so many other people that deserve credit and are not getting enough credit, actually, it has to be said, in the TV show itself. I know there's been some controversy about the co-director of the game not getting credit, and that's a problem. um but okay, so we'll do that when it's over. We'll do a kind of maybe a bonus episode or something on that. So the issue I have with Joel and Ellie right now is that I think we've gotten pretty much all of the, with the exception of Ellie, we've gotten pretty much everything there is to know about Joel. Unless they've got some surprises in store for us that is brand new to the show. Um, we've already gotten who he is. I teach Joel as a character. The Last of Us as an example of writing premises for films, or premises for stories on my master's program. And one of the reasons why I teach it is because it's so easy to, not because it's a basic idea or anything like that, but it's a very easy way to get people to be thinking about character relationships, how people's backstories can be used to inform how stories are then written moving forward, and so on. And in this case, it's man who loses 14-year-old daughter has to bring a 14-year-old girl across country. and like a surrogate daughter across country, and it's like it's so distilled and simple and effective.
Thanks so much for watching our video, everybody. We really hope you enjoyed it. You can like us and subscribe to us over here on YouTube. And if you want to hear more of this conversation, head over to Spotify, Apple, places like that for a much longer version. But for now, YouTube thinks you'll like these ones. They look pretty good. I reckon you should check it out, especially that top one.